everybody. Welcome to the Ronline Report. Today's guest, if you were attending the Olympia weekend a couple weeks ago, or if you followed along at home, you were enjoying the fruits of this man's labor. He is Chief Olympia Officer, Dan Solomon. How are you, Dan?
Ron, I'm finally catching my breath, but I do like your shirt, man. You're representing, you're wearing that logo very well today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I kept walking past the gift shop. I'm like, you know what? I need an Olympia shirt. So I got one.
Hey, what size are you wearing these days? Double, triple X? What are you wearing?
It's medium. Nah, probably double X.
Send me your address. I'll send you over some stuff. Let's go.
Hey, yeah, I love free stuff, man. I love free stuff. So, yeah, the dust is cleared. It's been, what are we, about it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks now. I can't even keep track. 3 weeks
It's
ago?
been a couple weeks, and yeah, we're already looking at 2020. It's amazing how quickly you shift gears. Well, you know how it is. Just think about as your competitive bodybuilding days go. You walk off the stage, you kind of go through your notes, and you immediately start looking at the next one. And we kind of take that same approach here with the Olympia. Our team is already reviewing all the analytics and kind of going through all the feedback and getting some kind of clarity on what things that we can do better, and certainly things that we can build upon. And it's already full speed ahead of 2020 with 11 months to go.
Wow. Okay. So let's start off with just a review of the changes that were made from 2018 to 2019. What was different about the Olympia weekend this year versus previous years?
Well, it's funny. I love to hear other people tell me what they thought was different, but I'm not going to do the old interview swap on you. I'm not going to do that. But and I will tell you that there was a lot of things. There's so many different ways. This is what I realized this year. There's so many different ways that people measure the success of the Olympia. There are those who measure it based on foot traffic and ticket sales, which of course we're very pleased by those numbers. We're ahead in all of those categories, which is great. There's some people that measure it by the success or the foot traffic on the Meet the Olympians or the press conference. And then there are some people that measure it based on production value on the arena stage. I know that was something we spent a lot of time on this year at the Olympia. We wanted to kind of create the type of stage environment that was befitting of being the showcase event in the world of fitness and bodybuilding competition. So our team, led by Tamer and of course Martine and Caden and really Angelica, the rest of the crew, everybody worked so hard to take that stage production to another level. And then there's people that measure these contests in ways that, quite frankly, we have no control over. And those are things like the caliber of the lineup. That's another way that people measure it. So everybody has their own barometer as to how they would measure the success. We worked on a lot of things this year. We wanted to bring the celebrities back to the weekend. We were very pleased that we were able to do that. We wanted to sell more tickets. We were able to do that. We wanted to heighten the overall stage experience, that production. We did that. But looking at it, critically, because I'm always looking at things 100 different ways, there's things that I'd like to improve in a few areas going into 2020. I know that's not what you asked. You wanted more of a look back. But
eventually I do want to know, what this had to be a huge learning experience for you. It had to be.
It was. It was. And one of the things that really made it challenging was we didn't really have our whole team together until about 4 or 5 months before this year's event. We didn't have the benefit of a full year cycle to build and plan and strategize. We didn't get that benefit. So we really, I was hired shortly after last year's event. And then I spent the first few months hiring people, identifying, what fit and what didn't fit with what we were trying to do for the future of the brand and of the event as a whole. And then it was only with about 4 or 5 months to go that we kind of had our team locked into place, and then we had to dig in and do the work. So we didn't have the luxury of a lot of time. Now this year, of course, we have the full calendar year with our team intact and ready to go. So that's real positive. But the one, I would say, self-critical analysis that I would provide is the same way people left the arena and they felt like it was a heightened experience, and you and I have talked about that and others. I'd like for people to leave the expo next year feeling that same way. I think there's more we can do with the expo. The expo, from an experiential standpoint, needs to go to a new level. The model for expos has changed so much. Even the way vendors, the way exhibitors approach their expo booths has changed a lot. You remember years ago, Ron, we'd all go to the expo back in the day, and we would judge our expo experience based on how much free stuff we got, right? We'd have these big bags and we'd walk around and we'd collect supplements and t-shirts and magazines
I'd be
and
there like trick or treat.
right, exactly. We get back to your hotel room and you dump it on the bed and you were all excited, or on the flight home you go through all your stuff. Now it's changed a little bit because these exhibitors, they're not giving away stuff like they used to. It's a very they're selling stuff. It's and I get every company has their own strategy, and I support that. And as an Olympia, as the Olympia, we want to get behind whatever the individual objectives are of the exhibitors and of the sponsors. But it has changed the way the attendee feels value in terms of their time at the expo. So I do feel like the burden shifts back to us as organizers of the event to do more, to make the expo look different, feel different, and provide more for the exhibitors, provide more for the fans. And that's probably an area where you're going to see the biggest change going into 2020.
Hmm. Yeah, it's all the expos are like that now because, like you said, it wasn't that long ago. I remember I never had time to do it really, but I'd see these people with these massive stuffed bags, and they'd go back to the room and dump that, and come back get
Yep.
another giant bag, and now you have to kind of wait in line usually, and someone's there with a tablet to get your name and your email address and your phone number, and then you get like a couple little packets of stuff. But that's not you don't control the vendors and what they're giving away. I mean, neither does the Arnold Classic or any of the expos, but that's I guess the model has shifted because everybody wants and needs your info, your email, and things like that. But yeah, we heard about the expo, and people were saying, well, maybe it wasn't as crowded. Which personally, I don't like crowds. I'm claustrophobic, so I was cool with not being stepped on and breathed on and all that. But it still had a good amount of people, and it had a lot of stuff to look at and do. Um, just in general, what are some? Do you want to add more activities to it, more events to it next year, maybe?
Well, I can tell you, the expo was look, everybody's going to give you their own take and everybody's going to give you their own angle, right? But at the end of the day, the expo was well attended. Our expo ticket sales were up by about 11%, so we were pleased with that. The expo configuration was a little bit different this year in terms of, to your point, creating more experiences. We brought in Spartan Race this year. We had a fitness fashion show this year. We had a Performix skateboarding exhibition. And these are all things that sort of, and you'd be surprised, there's a big athletic contingency. It's like that whole X Games crowd that came to experience all that. So there were a lot of different things that we provided, but we really need to do more. And I think it is all about creating more experiences, more interaction, more ways where the fans can feel engaged in whatever part of that whole fitness realm that they feel tied to, whether it's endurance sports, whether it's overall fit and healthy living, or bodybuilding or training, nutrition, also gaining more knowledge and more value through educational programs. There's just a lot of things that we can do, and I think we need to take it to another level. And I think in 2020, that's going to be the thing. In 2019, again, it was great having, Shaquille O'Neal sitting in the front row, and Mark Wahlberg and Mario Lopez and a bunch of big time UFC fighters, and, Tito Ortiz and all these guys. They were all in the house, and they kind of brought a different level, a different energy, and also enabled us to reach new audiences, which is always something that's near and dear to my heart, trying to connect with new communities, taking advantage of a lot of the social influencers that joined us this year. That was a big part of our approach. So that also helped us sell more tickets and get people there. I can tell you the biggest thing, though, this year, and I think it was a big victory, not just for the Olympia, but for bodybuilding as a whole, and that is the fact that, I'm sitting there in that arena on Saturday night. You were there as well. And we're watching the biggest night of the year play out. And, of course, the place was absolutely packed. It was very gratifying to see the way everybody showed up for the finals of the Olympia on Saturday night. So we're sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, there were some great bodybuilders, as everyone knows, who did not compete this year. Great bodybuilders. Phil Heath, one of the greatest of all time. Kai Green, one of the most popular bodybuilders in the world. Our reigning champ was obviously not in the contest this year. Big Ramy was not in the contest this year. A lot of, disappointments as far as guys not competing for a variety of reasons. But in spite of all of that, the place was packed on Saturday night for the Mr. Olympia finals. And I think that speaks to just how big the sport is, how big the event has become. It's larger than any one individual athlete. And I think that was an important message for all of us to take with us, is to know that Well, we obviously want the biggest names, the best in the lineup, because that's what the Olympia has been built on. It sure is gratifying knowing that, look, when Arnold retired after 1980, people wondered if the sport would be able to sustain, and it
Wow.
did. When Ronnie retired, people wondered. When Cutler, as popular champion as there has been in a long time, when he retired, we wondered how this thing was gonna sustain. Um, Phil Heath runs off 7 in a row, steps back. People wondered. What we now know is we love the best bodybuilders in the world. We want them on that stage. Next year's contest lineup is going to be epic from what we're hearing,
Mm.
but it's very gratifying to know that the Olympia and the sport is larger than any individual competitor. And if there was any doubt about that, that question was answered on Saturday night at the Orleans Arena.
Yeah, we were debating that on the MD boards on the No Bull Forum for probably the last 2 weeks leading up to the show, because we knew at that point most of all the names you mentioned were already non-participants. We knew that Nathan Dasher was like a week out. I think he was the last person we found out was not going to be making it. But me and especially Mike Cox, Big Mike Cox, because we're older and we've been to a lot of Olympias. We've been following the sport many years. We made the observation, the prediction. I said, you know what? If you're a fan of bodybuilding and you're a fan of the Olympia, you're going to go to the Olympia every year because that's our Super Bowl. That's our big show. Of course, we want all the top guys in it, but it's still, that's the most prestigious show. It's the biggest title, and you're still going to get an incredible lineup. And regardless of the fact that we didn't have a few guys there that we all wish were there, obviously, it was still the Olympia, and it's still larger than life. And the production values, I got to give it up to you. It was you took it up several notches. I felt like I was at like the Emmy Awards or something, the Academy or the MTV Awards at times, the way with all that going on. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the place sold out for Saturday night, despite not having this guy and that guy, it tells you bodybuilding fans are bodybuilding fans, and Olympia fans, they go for the Olympia. They want to be at the best show in the world.
Yeah.
Also, you know, I think it's a great thing in one aspect that we didn't have a few guys because it sets up 2020 for such an amazing show. We kind of needed a year where something was a little off and we're missing a couple guys to have the next year be set up for people are already everyone's talking about the 2020 Olympia now, and we just finished the 2019 Olympia. That's unheard
It's
of.
it's really exciting. I mean, look, presumably, we're going to have Flex Lewis competing for an
Ah,
Olympia title. People are
yeah.
still wondering how he might have done a couple weeks ago. Of course, this Hadi Chupan story. I know you're among them. The Hadi Chupan story is a great story, and he delivered, which made it even better. It wasn't just marketing. It wasn't just, it was real. He presented something that was very formidable. There's a lot of people that feel like he could have won the contest. He was extremely impressive. But however you feel about it, the bottom line is he's legit. So you have these two guys that are 212 standouts, and Hadi Chupan and Flex Lewis, that are going to be competing theoretically for the Mr. Olympia title next year. And then, of course, we'll have to see what Phil decides, and the reigning champion Brandon Curry is going to be back. And you can be sure that Brandon knows what he needs to do. Like, that's the thing. I mean, look, I think we've all seen better versions of Brandon, right? We've seen better versions of William Bonac up and down that lineup. I don't think anybody really, with the exception of Hadi. I think Hadi was the one guy, right, that kind of walked out, and you were like, you know what, this guy really, he was
Legit.
on, right?
Yeah.
But the other guys, they could have been better. But I think Brandon Curry, in the eyes of the judges, represented probably the best of all worlds in terms of thickly muscled, Mr. Olympia champion type physique. But I'm not a judge. I've never been good at judging these competitions, so I'm not even going to pretend to provide any ultra high level analytics on who should have won. But it definitely, the door is wide open. I think we all see that. And Brandon Curry, I'm sure, is going to do everything he can to stay on top. We'll see how it goes.
Now that you mentioned the Hadi Chupan, and it was almost miraculous, but I know it wasn't divine intervention. There was a lot of people who helped make it happen. Personally, did you have a hand in getting that visa for Mr. Chupan?
Well, I didn't personally get him a visa. I can tell you that. I know that there was a lot of people that were heavily involved. I know that of course, his trainer and the owner and his, I guess you could say, his sponsor as well, Hani Rambod, took a very active role in that process. I do know that it was very important to us as a contest to do everything we could to get him there. But in the end, there were so many moving parts in that process that I don't really ultimately know what got him here, and I still don't know, and that's sincere. I really don't know what ultimately got him here. I just know in the end, he ended up landing on a plane in Northern California, and Hani Rambod picked him up from the airport. And it was funny because when Hani picked him up from the airport, he posted something on social media. I knew there was some things in the works, but I didn't know he was actually on his way here. I called up Hani and I said, Hani, were you gonna just were you not going to tell me that he was on his way? But in the end, I think it was a very delicate situation, and it involves things that I'm not even qualified to pretend to understand. But he got here, and we were so proud that we were able to give him the rightful chance to compete among the best in the world, because I don't think anybody would deny that he deserves it at this point.
Yeah. So that was a huge story. That was 2 weeks out from the Olympia. He showed up late on a Friday night in California. And then for a week, we didn't know what he was doing as far as opener 212. So, we had our fair share of drama leading into the show, considering, the reigning champ and the 7-time champ weren't in it. Another thing that I think is kind of cool that we don't have a repeat champion. We're going to have Brandon come back, obviously, try to get it. But, this is 3 different Mr. Olympias in 3 years.
That's right.
I'm thinking back to 1979, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84. We had a different Mr. Olympia every single one of those years. And, I wasn't quite following the sport. I was still a kid then, but I think that's an exciting thing if we get into an era like that where the title changes hands more so than, as much as I love Phil, I think he's an amazing athlete. It gets boring watching anybody win over and over and over because you feel like it's a foregone conclusion. All he's got to do is show up looking the way he's supposed to look, and he's going to keep the title for as long as he wants.
But you know what? Taking our preferences aside, here's what it's a reminder of. It's a reminder of how rare those guys are. The guys like a Phil Heath who's able to hang on to it 7 times, or a guy like a Ronnie Coleman who can win the title 8 times. Those things aren't supposed to be common occurrences. It's those are otherworldly type physiques. Those are special, convergences of genetics and all sorts of things that create these specimens that are able to be great for year after year after year after year. It's a rare occurrence that should happen, and it shouldn't happen often. And I don't know when the next one of those guys is going to come along. But I think we would all agree that guys like Phil and Ronnie and a few of the others that have dominated, like Dorian for years, and Arnold, those are not everyday occurrences. And when they come along, I encourage everybody when they do come along to really appreciate it, because when you're seeing it, it's special. When you're seeing a run like what Phil had, and who's to say it's over, but when you see a run like what Phil had, instead of jumping on it, negatively, really embrace and appreciate what you're seeing. It's like in any sport when you see a guy hit 70 home runs in a season, or you see a guy just go on a tear. Just sit back and admire it, and because it doesn't happen often, and we are discovering that now as we're going through this run of Sean Roden winning it last year and Brandon winning it this year, and who's to say how it's going to play out next year? Maybe Brandon Curry finds a formula. Let's face it, Brandon Curry has the goods to be very good for a long time, and sometimes the best thing you can do is to win a title a little bit off the mark, because then it gives you a chance to make those adjustments, tighten up, and then they're comparing you to the way you were last year. And then next, Brandon rattles off 3 or 4 in a row. That certainly is not out of the question. But I'm definitely excited to see how it plays out in 2020, because there's a lot of great scenarios to look forward to.
I think people got a lot more confidence in the judging overall this year because I've been to a lot of Olympias, probably almost as many as you, probably not as many as you, but it's been common that anyone that held the Mr. Olympia title, I should just say Olympia title because I'm talking about multiple divisions now, as long as they showed up looking fairly decent, they typically would just keep winning because it was that knockout the champ thing. And we saw a classic physique 2-time champ get taken down by well, I shouldn't say new guy. Chris has been around a while too. We saw Angelica Teixeira get beaten, who was a 3-time champ. Men's physique, we saw the reigning new champion get beat. So, I mean, I personally felt like the judging was spot on this year. Of course, it's opinion. We're always going to differ with a couple little things here and there. But overall, I think people got a lot more confidence because they saw that it wasn't one of those status quo situations where just because somebody had an Olympia title didn't mean that they were going to keep that Olympia title. Did you get a lot of feedback about that?
Yeah, it's important that when you walk in the building to not have any idea how it's going to play out. I think that's an important part of what makes any sporting event, special and memorable and compelling. And we definitely had that this year. And I think it is important. You're right. There was so many years where you would just show up and it was just about a matter of who's going to finish second this year. And it seems like ever since Dexter in 2008, that was kind of when that whole vibe changed, because then you realized that Jay can be beaten, and then Dexter beats Jay, and the next thing you know, Jay comes back and beats Dexter, and then Phil beats Jay, and then then the train goes from there. But it's an important thing, and I couldn't agree with you more. Now, I will say this though: as much as I love the up for grabs mindset, I also love seeing greatness at the highest level. So I'm looking forward to seeing somebody, whether it's Brandon, whether it's Big Ramy, whether it's maybe and I caution anybody who writes off Phil, because remember now, Jay wins the title in '06. And then in '07, he wins it again with that close call with Victor. And then, of course, Dexter takes him out in '08. And then Jay was done, right? That was going to be that. And then Jay came back arguably better than ever and had a whole second career. So it's not like Phil can't come back next year and rattle off two or three more. It's just one of those things where I think just when we think we have things figured out, suddenly they take a turn and it's just a whole different narrative. So I think there's a lot of things that can materialize, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who doesn't think Phil can come back and win again is out of their damn mind. Come on.
Right.
I mean, unless he comes back with like a 50-inch gut or something, Phil at his best was damn near unbeatable. Very hard to beat. Kite his best for 3 years in a row. Couldn't beat him. I really hope Phil comes back. Please.
Ron, let me ask you this though. I mean, because you've been to a ton of Olympias. You've been around the sport as long as anybody doing what you do. What was your take over your Olympia experience from the time you got there? As you made your way through the venues, as you were kind of getting feedback from the other attendees and the fans, and I'd love to hear your take, because you and I haven't had a whole lot of conversation about it, and I've always appreciated your take. And as I go into these meetings with our team, and I sit with Tamer and the rest of our group, and we start to kind of put our notes together, what are some of the things that you felt as you made your way around the Olympia at 2019?
Okay. I thought it was very efficiently run, very well organized. Personally, I always want to be like in the front row center at everything. So, that's an access thing. You gave us good access. Don't get me wrong, but I'm greedy. I always want to be like right up there front.
Okay.
No, I don't have too many notes for you. I thought you guys did an amazing job. I don't see a whole lot of room for improvement. I'm sure you do, but as far as as an attendee, as a fan, and as someone who was there for work purposes, I thought it was all smooth as butter, really. Honest to God.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying. I thought your coverage was great. I really thought that it was funny, because when I took this job, I'm a media guy at heart. That's what I've been doing for a long time. So to me, it was really important to create more of an inclusive environment for the media, especially the media that I know has been doing the work for a long time and has really paid their dues to sort of lay the groundwork for all the stories that we follow and all the access and all the pre-event promotion. It was very important for me that the media, to the best that we could possibly control, had as much access and had as much of an inclusive experience as possible. And I know we're going to try to do more things next year to enhance that even further. But I appreciate you saying what you did, because there's no doubt. Look, the media is a big part of what we do, and it's obviously something that means a great deal to me, because that's been my world for a long time. So I'm glad you guys felt good about that, and we'll see if we can bump you up a couple rows next year. But I don't want you to make Steve jealous. If Steve's sitting behind you.
He was behind me. That's right. But I'm trying to take pictures and everything. But I want to thank you, because that was the best access I've had at the Olympia for many years. Previously, obviously we're different companies, and there's rivalries and this and that with the magazines and that. But, I'm glad you really put that aside for the purpose of the Olympia. And, also AMI gave us access to a lot of the athletes that we want to interview, which is greatly appreciated, because, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to make a living with what we do, but we're trying to promote the sport, promote the athletes, and, we can all help each other. And, you did that. You and Angelica were instrumental in, I don't know how many interviews between the ones I did leading up to the show, and Giles, and at the show. you guys helped us out a lot. So thank you for that.
Oh, glad to do it. And I should give a big shout out, of course, to Giles and AJ. Those guys I know, big supporters of the sport as a whole, which is obviously means the most, and great advocates for the Olympia. And I know Steve was on site, and it's always good to catch up with Steve. But really, just it was a great experience. But yeah, right now we're full steam ahead to 2020. One of the things that we are going to try to do this year is we're going to try to get our tickets on sale earlier. And when I say earlier, I mean like early enough so that people can stuff their stockings around the holidays with Olympia tickets. And I
Wow.
know that might be a little ambitious, but I've always thought that it's a shame that a bodybuilder or a bodybuilding fan can't buy tickets for their other bodybuilding friends, for a holiday gifts, for Christmas gifts, for Hanukkah gifts, for whatever you celebrate, to get out there and be able to purchase those tickets. We've never been able to do that, and that's something that I'm trying to work on. And hopefully in the next week or so, I can figure out a way to do that, because I want to get things turned around quicker. I want to get that process rolling. Of course, our VIP tickets. December, January, we'll start to reintroduce those programs. We're going to change some of those programs a little bit to create some different types of ticketing experiences. Now that I've had a chance to go through it one time, I've seen what works, what the fans really appreciate, or what the fans really value, and what the fans really don't value. And those are things that we had to figure out through this first go around. And I think we're getting there. And so just keep an eye out, MrOlympia.com. We'll keep everybody up to date. And of course, Ron, I'll keep you apprised. And we appreciate all the love, man. You guys have been great.
What a great friend would buy you like VIP tickets for Olympia. I've never had a friend like that.
Yeah, yeah. That's but even if they're not VIP tickets, even if they're just regular
Like, yeah,
tickets,
regular tickets. So,
but either way, what could be a better gift than a chance to experience the Olympia in 2020?
uh, I'd like you to address one rumor about location. Some people are talking about it moving to a different hotel or something. I don't know. You probably can't comment anyway, but are you guys pretty set with keeping things the way they are as far as the locations?
Well, I'll tell you this. Every year, first of all, I want to just I want to pay a compliment to the folks, the staff at the Orleans. I know the Orleans takes a lot of criticism for a variety of things. Or obviously, they're not on the strip. It's not the most opulent of places. We get that. But man, that team out there works really hard to do everything they can to execute the weekend in a way that's relatively seamless. So we're very grateful for the hard work of that entire team. Right now, there are no plans to do anything but continue with what we've been doing. But I'll say the same thing that every person who's running any kind of a business should say, and that's we constantly evaluate and constantly look for ways to improve the Olympia as an experience for the athletes, for the fans, for the media, for everybody involved. We look at logistics. We look at keeping things as easy as possible, or making things even easier if we can. And if opportunities like that ever presented themselves, and they do from time to time, we look at them. And so I just simply say never. We're always looking at different ways to improve the Olympia. But right now, there's nothing to report. We're just kind of catching our breath from 2019, and we're looking ahead to 2020. And look, Vegas has a lot of stuff going on. There's a football team getting ready to move into Vegas, and opportunities for different locations can be challenging to make work. But the Las Vegas Convention Center, they do a great job for us. The Orleans Arena is a tremendous facility. And, I think, to answer your question, look, the doors are always open for things, as they always will be. And right now, there's really nothing to report on that. But if there is anything, I'll definitely let you know.
Yeah, because people are referencing the old days where everything was in the Mandalay, but the expo back then was a fraction of what it is now.
Yeah.
You couldn't put that expo in the ballroom spaces that they had the Mandalay. It's grown much too much. So, I think the convention center is a perfect size for it, and it's easy to get to. If people complain, they got to realize you guys shuttles going, I don't know, 12, 14 hours a day back and forth. It's very easy to get back and forth. And the Orleans Arena, top notch. You know what? If you want to go to some five-star hotel and have a suite, you can always stay somewhere else if you really want to. But I mean,
Well, and it's funny you say that, because a lot of people have had concerns, believe it or not. There's another side of this conversation. We focus on, we hear a lot of focus about, the opportunity to move to a fancier, more high-end place, which is certainly something to look at, right? But
Yeah.
there are people out there that really enjoy the price points at the Orleans. A room at the Orleans is very, very affordable, which is obviously much appreciated by a lot of people. So it's not like everything else. It's not always a one-sided discussion. There's people that love those Wednesday, Thursday, $59 room nights at the Orleans, and that actually enables them to be able to come out and afford tickets to experience the Olympia. So just understand that it comes from both sides for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, these hotels that some people are talking about on the weekends, those are like $400 or $500 a night. Some of these places. So
Yeah.
good luck, guys.
Hey, Ron, what do you think of the what do you think of the press conference this year with what we did with it? We kind of shook it up a little bit.
Um, I want you to bring Dennis James back. Sean,
Okay.
I like Sean too. I like Bob's awesome. I love Bob. I just like Dennis. Dennis has a. I didn't appreciate Dennis. Put it this way. I didn't know how good Dennis was until he wasn't there, and I was like, I kind of miss him because he just has a different vibe, a different way of sort of getting things out of people. I don't know, but
Yeah, no, that's
I do like the way it was set up. The giant sand house sitting there and everything. Yeah, no complaints other than that.
yeah. What
Except,
we decided to do, we decided to bring all the guys in from the back because we wanted to create that more. We wanted to create that connection between the fans and the athletes as they were walking in. If you recall, in years past, they would just come in from behind the curtain. So
right.
this year we brought them in. And we tried to create more of like an NBA style entrance. So as they were arriving, the fans would be more a part of that experience. But you're right. Once they get onto the stage, then it kind of goes back to its standard format. And I do agree. I think there are things that we can do to try to get more out of the athletes. And of course, we were very pleased to bring athletes from every one of the 8 Olympia divisions this year, which I know meant a lot to the athletes and to the fans. But it's definitely something. I'll tell you, there was a time when these guys would come in swinging, and they would really stir it up, and people would get excited. Now people have just become the athletes have become very respectful of each other, which is noble, but it doesn't always create the energy that people are lined up to see.
Yeah, I mean, there were years past where it was kind of like WWE almost, where they'd be like yelling at each, almost,
Yeah.
they would get, sometimes people would take their shirts off and try to pose down against each other. Didn't Kevin take his shirt off in 2016? But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Ronnie took his shirt off uh, didn't he challenge Gunter to a pose down at the press conference? But
Yeah, there's
geez,
been some good moments like that, and I think we got to get out in front of it and try to bring some of that back because that is an area I used to host that thing years ago, and I
that's right.
remember that was something that I was always big on trying to create some moments, get these guys engaging, interacting in ways that sort of show their personalities. And a lot of times they're in that carb depleted state. They just kind of show up and they sit there and they just try to get through it. But hopefully we can do some things to mix that up a little bit. But I appreciate your feedback on that because that is something that we're working on.
Yeah, but I get it with these guys. They don't want to. They don't want to stir up trouble. They don't want to trash talk each other. They're exhausted. They're hungry. There's got to be an in between. There's got to be a somewhere we can meet in the middle where they can keep things a little more interesting. Giles had an idea that I don't know if I agree would work. He said have the guys all have. They should all come to the press conference with something to talk about, a story. I don't know how realistic, how feasible that really is, but I mean that is ambitious. That's an ambitious way to
Look,
think about it.
Joe Weider used to say to us all the time. He used to say that this sport isn't about the physiques; it's about the stories.
Right.
Everybody got into this sport for a reason. Everybody became inspired to look. Bodybuilding is, to many degrees, is about suffering, and it's about going through some things that are very, very challenging in many ways. And you don't take that on unless there's a real deep reason to do it. So Giles is not wrong because it's at the core of everybody up there is a story, and I think if people understood the reason why these athletes go through what they go through to achieve that level of status in the bodybuilding world, they'd understand that there's a lot more to it than just what they do with reps and sets. So maybe we can see if we can get some people to start sharing those stories because I think people would really appreciate hearing it.
Yeah, like one of his, I think one idea that wouldn't have worked, just as one example, because I'm sure there are a lot of things that would work, challenges. But if you ask somebody and they had an injury, Rolly had the hamstring injury, and nobody knew. I think a few people on the inside knew, but he wouldn't want to address that at the press conference because then he knows all the judges are going to be staring hard at his hamstrings, looking for inflammation and bruising and things like that. But so they're going to play. They're going to keep some things and play the cards close to them. But other things, yeah, maybe they could talk about. I don't know. if a baby daughter was born a week ago, or I don't know, something interesting. Because
Yeah.
just trying to get them to talk about how they're looking, how they're feeling, isn't always interesting. But we got 11 months to figure this out. Here's a question,
Well,
Dan. How many people were on your staff roughly? It had to be a ton of people.
yeah, so there's the core staff, and of course we brought in Tamer Al-Gindi to be our producer for the weekend, and there's some folks that not everybody are as familiar with. Of course, Angelica Nebbia, she was my first hire, and she's our Olympia coordinator, and she works real hard at the office late and gets there early every day, and she kind of oversees a lot of the ticketing components and a lot of the relationships with the sponsors and the exhibitors and all that sort of thing, and then. Martin Carrillo, he's a real genius when it comes to taking a concept and bringing it to life visually on a stage from a production standpoint. Caden Riley, just a tremendous workhorse when it comes to just all phases of the execution of the Olympia. We had Heather providing West Coast support for us in many aspects of the event, and then of course there were people on site throughout the weekend that were a big part of the week-long production and just the hands-on team. And it would take too much time to start rattling off names, and I probably would forget some, and I would end up insulting somebody. But I would just say that this is a very much a team effort. There's so many layers to it, and then we have a whole sales staff that works very hard with the exhibitors and the sponsors to do their part to make sure that, look, without the exhibitors and the sponsors, we wouldn't be able to give away more prize money than any event in the world. So those are the things that enable us to kind of sustain that whole thing. But there's a lot of people involved with this event, and we're very grateful to have what I think is the best team. And I'll also give a shout out to Gary Udit and his team, who come in and they handle the amateur Olympia. And by the way, this year's amateur Olympia was far and away the largest amateur Olympia that we've ever had in Vegas, to the tune of about 30% bigger in terms of registrations and ticket sales than we've ever had at the amateur Olympia. There was more than 600 competitors at the amateur Olympia this year, which we kind of treat that as it's almost becomes like an afterthought on the weekend, right? But if the amateur Olympia was a standalone event, it would be one of the 4 or 5 biggest amateur events in the world. And we have it as sort of a precursor to our Olympia weekend, which gives competitors, amateurs, a chance to experience Olympia weekend as a competitor. So Gary and his team came in and did a great job there, and of course Big Steve Weinberger and everybody, at the Sandy and the whole crew at the table there. There's just so many people that work tirelessly to make this thing go, and they do a great job of making me look good. I'll tell you what, because a lot of the feedback that came in on various aspects were directly related to the hard work of individuals on our team. So I'm glad that you asked me about them, because they deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah. When you say tirelessly, here's another question. How much sleep were you getting the last 2-3 weeks?
Tell you what, man, I was beat up. It was an intense. It really demonstrated. It forced me to expand my bandwidth in many ways. It's funny. I almost equate it to, all the years where you go to the gym and you think you're working out, and then all of a sudden one day you hire a really good trainer who puts you through that first workout, and you can't even, when it's over, you can't even lift up your arms, or you can't even walk. You realize that all these years you thought you were working out, you weren't doing shit, right? You weren't doing anything. And then you realize once this new trainer came in, that's how this position has been. I've always viewed myself as being busy and having a lot going on. And then I got this job, and then I realized I haven't been doing anything, because this job is just a whole nother level when it comes to marketing and branding and the business and the revenue and the expenses and the production and the ticketing and all the components that go into putting on a full-scale convention center / arena / hotel production. It has tested me in many ways, but the best part about it is it has really showed me that there is a lot of support out there. And I can tell you that from the moment I got this position, the phone calls, the texts, the emails from people who just expressed their support in so many different ways, guys like you and many others who reached out, and just whatever. The Olympia means so much to so many different people in so many different ways, that you realize how special the event is, sort of in the annals of bodybuilding in our community, that it was extremely gratifying and touching to see how much this event means to so many and how much they were willing to do to help us as a team here at the Olympia to be successful and to try to, raise the bar and to establish a new standard. And look, we have a lot of work to do, but I think we're off to a pretty good start, and I'm excited by where we're headed. But yeah, I didn't sleep much, and only recently have I started to kind of catch my breath. And my wife finally feels like she has a husband again, and my son feels like he has a dad again. Because I got to be honest with you, I kind of fell off track there for a couple months. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're not the type. You're not going to pat yourself on the back, but it had to have been a real sense of accomplishment when it was all done to look back and say, "Wow, I really pulled that off. I really did that with so many moving parts, so many people, so many different things." I can't even imagine that kind of responsibility where your phone, your email must have been just like constant for the last few months leading up to the show, just nonstop.
Yeah, it was intense, but like anything worth doing, right? It was very gratifying when it all came together, and it was very. It meant a lot to me because I knew Joe Weider and I knew Ben Weider, and unfortunately Betty couldn't make it this year. And as I'm going through this whole process, there wasn't a single moment where they weren't with me in some way. And I say that not to just not to manufacture a moment. I mean that sincerely. Like, I know what this event meant to them and to their family, and to be trusted with that responsibility of carrying the Olympia forward. It really it was extremely important to me that we were able to honor their legacy and do it the right way. And I got the most touching phone call from Betty after the weekend, because she sent some of her family to the event and to be there, and she just had the most wonderful things to say. And I think when it was all said and done, we love the feedback from the fans. It's great when Dexter Jackson reaches out and says this was his favorite Olympia since his first one 20 years ago, or when Jay Cutler texts me at the end of the night and says you killed it and your team did great. And those are all super cool, and I loved it. But when Betty Weider reached out and she said the things that she said to me about what Joe would have thought, and it just, that really made it all worthwhile, and it gives us the hunger to want to do it even better next year.
Dan, thank you. You've been very generous with your time. Congratulations. It's hard to believe you pulled it off so well on your first try. I expected more hiccups because it's just the scope of the event and so much going on. But you would never have known that you hadn't been doing this for a long, long time. You would never have known this was your first attempt.
Thanks,
So
Ron. I appreciate it.
well done, sir. Well done. So people can keep up with the Mr. Olympia, the upcoming, at MrOlympia.com, correct?
Yeah, MrOlympia.com, MuscleandFitness.com. Of course, you guys over at MD, NPC News Online. I got to give a shout out to those guys, Frank and JM and the crew. They're still covering the Olympia. I mean, they have content after content. Those guys did a tremendous job. And of course, IFBBPro.com, Tony Blynn's website. That's the great thing about the Olympia. Everybody comes together for it. So all those websites will continue to cover the event. And as soon as we have an announcement on tickets, which I think we will in the next couple of weeks, we will get that out there. And hopefully you guys can start making your plans early to be a part of the 2020 event.
Awesome. Dan, thank you so much. Congratulations again. Thank you for the treatment you gave the MD staff and our on-site people. Very much appreciated. You made our job easier, and that's always a good thing, of course.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate everything, bud.
We're trying to do the best job we can, and you made it easier for us to do a better job. So thank you, Dan. All right, everybody. So MrOlympia.com. I believe it's Mr. Olympia LLC on Instagram as well. Is that right?
Yeah, all over the social. Mr. Olympia's Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. But yeah, no, it's I'll just leave you with this, Ron. The more we get to kind of go through this journey, because we're all doing this together. We've all been doing this for a long time, and it means just so much that we've gotten to a place in the sport now. There was times where there was a lot of division, there was conflict, there was a lot of almost unproductive, competitive conflict for many years. Yeah. And we've all been on different sides of that over the years. And what I've found is over the last couple of years, and especially over the last year since I've taken this position, I've really enjoyed seeing everyone just come together and understand that, look, we're all bound together by this same passion for training and nutrition and bodybuilding and all the things that we all love about this. And to see everybody kind of come together and get behind it, that's, to me, means more than just the Olympia as an event. It's representative of so much more. So thanks to you and everybody else who has gotten behind it.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching Ronline Pro with Dan Solomon. It was an Olympia to remember. Next year is going to be way better, bigger, better. I can't wait. And it's almost a year away, but I got to wait. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.